Ciao a tutti amici di Gimba Network, quello a cui state per assistere è un'intervista a Jenova Chen. Lui è un game developer che lavora presso DiG Company. Comunque ce ne parlerà lui più nel dettaglio. Cosa vedrete in questa intervista? Beh, una panoramica sul mondo dei videogiochi da qualcuno che effettivamente nell'industria ci lavora. L'intervista è in inglese con sottotitolo in italiano, spero vi piaccia e se divertitevi. Hi there friends from Gimba Network, I'm DiG and this is the first interview with a game developer. Today we have Jenova Chen from DiG Company. Yeah, for the ones who don't know you, could you give us a brief explanation of what your work is at DiG Company?
Okay, hi everybody, this is Jenova Chen. I'm the co-founder and a creative director from DiG Company. At DiG Company, we like to focusing on create small but very unique video games, and we like to innovate on what each of our game make you feel. We want to bring kind of new and fresh emotional experience to the gamers so they can play something that they have never seen and experienced in the past.
So you work like on Flower for that game company. You have like Flower, and there was also Flow, and the new Journey, which we'll talk about later.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that you are most known as the creative director for the PS3 title Flower, where that wasn't your first game, right? Well, what games have you worked on too?
Right, actually, Flower was more of a kind of how I was get noticed for the, like the console gaming industry. But before that, I worked on Flow, which was originally a Flash game, which was made in 2006, and it was getting about 5 million people's visit just for the Flash game. And before that, I worked on Cloud while I was in school. It's a student PC game. It was actually catching a lot of notice while I was still a student. But even before that, I have made over probably 12 different games. But yeah, Flower is the one which is most critically acclaimed.
Okay, fine. And how did you start developing games and why?
So I started to learn computer at a very young age. I think I started learning computer when like on 1990 or even earlier, maybe 89. So that's when computer is still Apple II computer, when the screen is still like monochrome screens. They're green, there's no color on them, and we're using these 5-inch floppy disks to carry things and store information. And during that time, I was actually not very interested in learning programming computer stuff, but it was the games running on the computer that kind of keep me interested in going to those classes.
Yeah.
But I've never really thought about making game. But during those classes, the students, in a school, we're all like elementary school, so we're talking about, oh, can we make something just like this game, except we actually translate this game into Chinese language, because I grew up in China.
Yeah.
But that's like my first experience. I spent about 2 weeks working on a program. This is the era before we even have bitmap images. So if you want to draw anything, you have to write a program to say, go to this point, draw a line to the other point in order to make anything that looks like a picture. So I spent 2 weeks working on a map for China, and I put it on a 5-inch floppy disk, and I was very happy to bring it from my home to the class so I can share with other people who want to make a game together. But the floppy disks, they are very easy to break. If you are not careful, all the information will be lost, and that's what happened to that floppy disk.
Oh.
And so that's 2 weeks of my intense work as a student, who is about 12 years old, and that was a big blow. And from that point on, the only thing I do with game is to play them, not making them. So when I was in college, I play a lot of game, and I also write computer programs, but I never make games. And I really started to lose interest in programming, so I started to go to audit a lot of animation classes. And I happened to join a video game club in the college, where the people there actually wanted to make their own games, because at the time in China, game is only imported from North America or Japan. And we were like, why can't we make video games? You know, it's not that we don't know how to program a computer, you know, application. So we started trying to make game together. But what I was working on is not programming, but actually making all the visual assets. I was working as an artist with the club. So we created some kind of Diablo 2 clone, Zelda clone, and you know, some
the famous stuff at the time.
Yeah, those stuff during college. And while I was working on them, I see that as more of a way for me to practice making 3D models and animations. And I was aspired to become an animation director in the future. So working on the game is more like helping my friends at the video game club. And then I applied to a grad school at University of Southern California in the United States, in a cinema school, in their animation department. And I was applying to become an animation artist. But then they say, hey, you know, you have all these computer background, you start programming at age 10. We have a new department called the Interactive Media Department, which both your artistic skill and programming skill can be applied. So I thought, well, maybe my animation is not good enough, so this is a kind of different way for them to reject me. And they say, well, but don't worry, if you go to that department, you can take animation classes because it's in the same school. So that's what I did. I came to Interactive Media Program, which later turns out to be the #1 video game program in America. But when I came in, you know, the school sent us to GDC for the first time. And I saw these student games, you know, kind of come from all around the world. And I was like, this is not the kind of game I would imagine. Because before that, I thought in America, every kid is super talented. They're like John Carmack, you know. But the game I saw is really bad. And I was like, the game I worked on while I was in college is way better than this. And so that kind of gave me some confidence. I met some other students in my program wanted to work on game together, and so that's kind of how we started working on games, is because we know we can do it better than others. So and then what happened is we worked on a game called Dieting, and you know, happened to be next year we entered the student contest, and we basically accomplished the goal. And the school really liked it because that attracted a lot of PR. And for those games that we worked on, we also attracted Electronic Arts to invest in the school.
Too?
Yeah, so then they started they actually started a grant in the school to sponsor students to work on games. And that's where I started working on cloud.
Already with the guys of that game company?
No, some of the guys. And so you asked me, this is actually a long answer, right? So why do I start working on games? After I worked on Cloud, which is more like an experimental project, we're just trying to make a game that's very different from the mainstream, like Grand Theft Auto. After I made that game, surprisingly, the game hit it off. It was on the local entertainment TV. It was in Australia's newspaper. There are people from Japan writing email to us, telling us how when they play the game, they have tears in their eyes. Which to me was a very surprising thing, because you know, I've been looking at this game forever. I don't see how this could be an emotional thing. But I just keep getting emails and emails, like 50, 100, you know, like 100 email from these people around the world. They're just saying, you know, we have never seen games like this. You should really consider making more games like this. You should turn this into a commercial game, so more people could know that game can be about something like this rather than, you know, just violence. And so that to me is like a calling, because there are actually people say, hey, can you tell everybody who was involved in making the cloud game that they're the beautiful people. You know, growing up my entire life, nobody really told me I'm a beautiful person. And so I realized there's something here. There's something in the cloud game that we made that really had a lot of value. You know, a lot of people around the world actually wanted us to make more of those. And to me, it's like a life calling. You feel like, a lot of people are actually depending on you, to do these things. And that's the moment where I start to realize this is what I'm supposed to do in my life. I'm supposed to make these games to help these people. And that's kind of how we started the career.
Okay, fine. So let's say that someone wants to become a game developer, okay? And what kind of knowledge is required, and how could one start making games?
It really depends, because game is a multifaceted, like multimedia.
Yeah, so artist, music, programming, and...
Yeah, so you can actually approach it from any angle, but if you're very good at music, you would probably consider to become a composer for not just for game, but also for movie, for concerts. But if you really want to dive into the core of game, which I would say it's the interactive design, the game design, and from that perspective, you kind of have to be a jack in all trades. As a good movie director, he needs to be familiar with all aspects of the movie making. So as a game designer, you should also try to be, familiar with all aspects around making the games. You don't have to be so good at one thing, but you should know the whole process. And you should have the ability to mock up a prototype. Even if you can't draw the best pictures, you can't make the best music, you can make a prototype that is the core of the game, that you can convince talented people to give you better music and better visuals to make this game into what it's supposed to be in the end. So to make a prototype, there are some knowledge you should know, which is basic scripting language. You don't have to learn all the low-level, very difficult engineering language, but you should at least know how to use, JavaScript or like Lua script to actually create interactive prototypes. So once you can create prototype, then you can really try out ideas with yourself, rather than depending on someone else to make a prototype for you to test out the idea, because it's always less efficient. So you have to have a certain skills or even like knowledge about certain tools like the Unity engine or Flash to make interactive prototypes.
Okay. So as for the job, which one do you think is taken in consideration the most when searching for a job in the industry? Past working experience or educational background?
Past working experience, because even though the school I went to is supposed to be the #1 school in video game education, the year I entered the school is the second year that department started. So the education is really, really young. And how would you expect that education can really change somebody while most of the people are still trying to figure out the medium? And I think the working experience is way more important than the education background. But what is good about education is that it offers you a space to make games, and you can make any kind of game beyond just the traditional commercial games. If you work in a big company, it's very likely the game you're working on is less inspiring. You're not really kind of pushing the boundary of what games could be. But if you go to a school to study game design, the sky is the limit. You're more likely to be able to make games, that will actually be the next big thing.
So like in projects or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Projects, yeah.
What has changed in the gaming world since the arrival of digital delivery platforms such as Steam, particularly for indie developers, I mean?
Well, independent game is very similar to independent film. Film used to be very expensive to make. The camera is super expensive. The film, that the thing that actually record film on, is super expensive. So nobody can really make film at home. It has to be done in these big budget, huge production house, controlled by these 3 or 4 big movie companies. And during that time, because of how expensive a movie was made, it's lack of innovation. But then when the technology become advanced enough so that the camera is cheap enough and the film is cheap enough, a lot of people can actually make films by themselves. And that is when the independent film are coming out and people are willing to break out the boundary and try new things. And then when these independent games really have a hit, then they become the new genre. And that's very much what is happening with the game industry today. The digital distribution essentially making the development cost of a game super cheap. Imagine in the past, in order to put a game onto your shelf in a GameStop, you have to raise the price of the game to be $60 so that the price will cover the shipping of the game, the shelf cost of putting the game in the store, and the storage cost, and also all these physical DVD discs burning. They all cost extra money. But with digital delivery, you can lower all those costs, so you can charge the game at super cheap price, and there will actually be a bigger audience. So that is really changing the game. That really helps the independent game developers today to have their voice heard.
Okay, so Steam and others seems perfect for indies.
Right, Apple Store,
yeah, or kind of
PSN, Xbox Live, they're all the same.
So could you estimate the average budget and production time for a game, let's say like Flower?
Flower is about $2 million. Yeah, so in America you can calculate basically in the game industry, depending on the city, in Los Angeles, a normal company, you can just basically count how many employees you have. Each person costs about $10,000, somewhere around that, per month. So if you have 10 people working on it for a year, that's about $1.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
So Flower is a two-year project with about 9 people, starting to 12 people. So it's about $2 million as a budget.
Okay. Nowadays, we are experiencing a trend which seems to push some developers to concentrate mostly on the graphical aspect of the games, sometimes overlooking other important things like, actual gameplay mechanics, innovation, and so on. What's your opinion on this?
I think, a game is just like any other medium. In order to stand out in the market, you have to have your own niche. You have to have your own advantage. The things that sets you different from others, the things that's new to the consumers. So certainly you can focus on the technology and the graphical power of the game. You can also focus on the sound, you can focus on the design. And what happens is, in each of these aspects, only the best person will be rewarded. You don't want to be the second best looking game in the market because nobody cares. Well, what happens is that a lot of the AAA games are having these standards. The graphics has to be this good, otherwise you are not even in the competition, and that is really wasteful because all these games have to have the exact same character technology, exact same lighting technology.
Okay, that piracy is a big topic of discussion nowadays. How does it affect the production of video games? And is it the same for indie developers too?
Indies usually embrace piracy because indies want their game to be heard and to be experienced. And if piracy helps, that's totally fine. And in fact, with the business model changing today, changing from retail model where you have to pay before you can play to a free-to-play game and you pay later, it actually makes a lot more sense to have piracy. So game is free to start, and you can reach the maximum possible market by offering the game for free, and then charge later.
As for your experience, do you think it's hard to create a game which can satisfy the majority of gamers?
Well, it depending on how you define the gamers. For example, hardcore console gamers are a very small group compared to the people who play Tetris or the people who play Words with Friends. And it depending on how you want to define the gamer in this question, if you can define them clearly, I don't think it's that hard to create something that will be appeal and satisfying to them.
So it depends on what target you are aiming for.
Right. Anything is tough. Even if a small niche market could be very difficult to hit.
Okay. At that game company, you like to refer to your own products as core games. What does it mean? What's a core game?
Well, core game is kind of getting old now, but what we're really trying to say is that, there are different type of gamers. There used to be the hardcore gamers. There are still hardcore gamers, and there are casual gamers, and then there's domain gamers, basically people who used to play a game, but now they're not playing it anymore. And we feel like everybody really is capable of playing games, but there are many reasons that stop these people from playing games. Hardcore games has too much required knowledge and background information. If you just never grew up with hardcore games, it will be very difficult to pick them up. Casual games, it's not like people who play casual games wouldn't want to play something more interesting. And I feel there's somewhere in between. There are kind of game that's carefully crafted, to make it very intuitive, so that both the hardcore players and the casual players and people who don't ever play games might actually be able to enjoy. I think Flower is a very good example. Players from 4 years old to 9 years old to teenagers to 40, 50, and even 70 years old, they could all play the experience and have a good time.
Okay, let's talk about your new upcoming PS2 title, Journey. It will be out on March 13th. How would you describe it?
When we work on games at that game company, we like to focus on the experience, how it's different from the past games, how it is going to make you feel. And so with Journey, we are trying to create an interactive experience. We call it an interactive parable. The idea is we wanted to put you on a journey to reflect and to take an adventure. And what we are trying to make is that Journey is our first online game, and we wanted to bring the players a fresh and unique experience when you meet someone else on the internet. In the past, most of the online games you play on console are competition, so it's about killing each other. Or later, there's co-op games, which it's mostly about killing some people together. But it's very rarely you would feel you're emotionally attached or connected with a player over the internet. And we really want to kind of create that kind of experience by providing an anonymous online experience to make people experience, the passage of a lifetime, and how these passages are crossing with each other, in this game.
Okay, seems really awesome. Can't wait to play it. Does being a developer change how you experience playing games?
Well, it changed my experience playing certain games, but if it's a really good game, it will manage to take you out of your, it will take you into a different world, and you would forget you're a game developer. But usually, if a game is not good, I will be very critical. I will be analyzing on the game the whole time.
So, what are your favorite games?
The favorite games are the defining games of the genres. So for me, the very strong emotional experience defines what's living in my memory. So when I think about fighting game, I think about the original Street Fighter 2 in the arcade, because that's the first time I saw a fighting game. And the experience and the visceral memory I have playing the arcade is so strong that none of the other games have ever topped that experience. So the first scary horror game will be Resident Evil, the original one. I just remember playing it when the dog come out of window. I was so scared. I was shooting at the dog, but I emptied all my clips. I still couldn't hit him, and I got killed. That kind of experience would only stay the first time, and then when you play other Resident Evil later, you're like, oh, I know, probably somewhere something's gonna jump out.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the first role-playing game I really cried for was a Chinese role-playing game. Something similar to Final Fantasy VII to a lot of Western players, which you cried for the character, and you really invested into the story. And so, yeah, it is hard to say which one is the most favorite because they all define different genre. You can't really compare them. So that's very difficult.
Okay, and what are you playing right now, or what will you play in a few weeks or so?
I've been playing a lot of Dota in the past. I'm a cheap player. I don't like to pay to play games, even though I make games. But so Dota is free, and then recently there's League of Legends, which I played.
Yeah.
I played. I played most of the games for research purposes, but the only game I play for fun are MMO games like World of Warcraft and these esports games like Street Fighter or League of Legends.
StarCraft.
StarCraft, yeah, I did play that as well. But these days I'm still playing League of Legends, but heavily anticipating the Dota 2.
Yeah. So maybe we'll meet there, okay?
We will, of course. Yeah.
Other hobbies apart from gaming?
So I like to watch film, watching TV dramas, anime. I think, I'm just interested in what the world is interested in because I'm a game designer. I really love people. I want to know what people are really in need today. You look around the world, what is the emotion they really want to experience? And if you can figure out that and make that, and it's probably will hit a lot of people and resonate with them. So I like to listen to news, world news, just pay attention to what's happening in the pop culture around the world. I like basically anything artistic.
And that's maybe another question. How do you imagine gaming industry 10 years from now? What do you think the major change will be?
The major change will probably be the fact we no longer ask you, are you a gamer or not? It's just like how in the music industry and the movie industry, nobody say, oh, are you a movie watcher or are you a music listener? Because these mature medium has a very full, comprehensive list of genres that covers all the basic emotional needs by human. You're really sad, you want something to cheer you up. You can always find a music to do that. You can always find a movie that will do it. But today, you may not find a movie that will help you if you're in a bad mood. A game that will help you if you're very sad. You might find something that will be similar to movie, like you can find the equivalent of a summer blockbuster action film. You get the same action adventure games. You can find a horror film with horror games. But you rarely see a romantic games or a games about drama or a games about the documentary to reflect serious topics in the society, or a game that lets you see the world in a different perspective. And those things will eventually be all explored because there are a market for that. And all these independent game developers are trying to find, all these, like a blue ocean market. And I would imagine in 10 years, there will probably be a lot of new kinds of games, like ever since Nintendo Wii, kind of sports game are becoming interesting. Ever since Guitar Hero, the music game gets interesting. And now ever since the social games, a lot of people, a lot of women in their 30s and 40s are interested in games. I would imagine in 10 years, almost all the age and gender group will have some games to play.
Okay, so that seems perfect and very good. So, last question. Any information on future projects you want to share with us?
Well, that game company has been trying to make games for people in all ages because we think, you don't have to be a gamer to play games. So we definitely will be heading to a future where, our focus is on, making these experiences that will be enjoyed by people in all age and genders. And hopefully it will be on these devices that everybody have access to.
So, the interview is finished. We thank you very much for being with us.
No problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Okay guys, that was everything we have for now. Be sure to leave a like, a comment and subscribe to Jenova Network if you haven't done it yet. Goodbye from DiG and Jenova Chen.